This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hi, it's Tony Bohr, CFO of Blackbaud, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 963.
We knew that COVID wasn't going to be there forever, so we invested a ton in R&D. And to put that into perspective, I think in 2019 we spent about $500 million in R&D. Last year this year we'll spend nearly $5 billion in R&D. So that's why we knew we had to bring more drugs to market as fast as possible, and we had the capital to do that, in which we felt very fortunate. So I joined in late 2022. The volumes are coming down, so we have to help resize the business over the last couple of years in terms of that manufacturing footprint. And then we've got to bring these drugs to market. I mean, that's really our job is, we've said by 2025, we'll launch 4 or 5 drugs. And by 2028, we hope to launch 15 drugs.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Jamey Mock, CFO of Moderna. It's no secret biotech disruptor Moderna has expanded its R&D efforts well beyond the COVID realm. On today's episode, CFO Jamey Mock explains how Moderna today has over 40 drugs in its pipeline, targeting various diseases such as respiratory, oncology, and rare diseases. What's more, CFO Mock tells us the finance function is not excluded from the firm's appetite for innovation, as he details Moderna's innovative use of mRNA technology and how it's become a key factor in de-risking the firm's R&D investments. You'll hear that and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com. Hello, we're speaking with Jamey Mock, CFO of Moderna. Jamey, welcome.
Hey, Jack. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you.
Good to have you with us. We would begin where we always do, which is just to ask you to look back, Jamey, and try to identify some of those experiences you feel prepared you to become a finance leader. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah. There's so many, Jack, over the course of a 25-year career, but probably when I reflect, 5 to 10 really stand out, and I'd put them into 3 categories. The first category is when you really have to lead through a thorny issue. The second category is when you take a new job and you feel completely out of water and it really prepares you, and I'll explain why. And the third is how you learn to truly communicate and inspire teams. So maybe touching on the first one, when you first, learn dealing with a thorny issue, you need to figure out, okay, I'm going to help lead this. It's going to be cross-functional. And I remember an example when I worked for GE Aviation, we were trying to win sole source on a Boeing aircraft. And that meant that I had to meet with every function inside GE Aviation, including manufacturing, R&D, sales, product development, et cetera, lawyers, finance people, et cetera, as well as all the functions at Boeing, and meet with every single one and meet their demands, meet with the corporate team. And so it's, those thorny issues that really give you a perspective of just how well-rounded you need to be and all the functions you actually need to touch.
What was that exactly? Let me just stop you, Jamey, because sole source, what exactly are you going around and speaking to each of these groups about?
Yeah. So At GE Aviation, they manufacture engines for commercial aircraft as well as military aircraft. And I was the CFO of the commercial aircraft division. And so our job, an engine doesn't fly on its own. It needs a plane. And so we work with the manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus and some of the others. And we wanted to be the only engine that was sold on that plane, which is called sole source, as opposed to having a competition for a 30-year aircraft and having somebody else also compete, because then the airline can ultimately select, do I want the 737 with the GE CFM engines on it, or do I want Pratt & Whitney or some other Rolls-Royce? And so we had already had sole source, and we wanted to maintain sole source, and that's what we were strategically trying to win.
And you were the CFO, and Jamey, forgive me for asking, I want to get to your other points. How long did it take you from the time you joined GE to step into such a role as that?
Yeah, geez, that must have been about 10 years, Jack, 9 or 10 years into the company. So GE has a terrific development program, and it's very structured, 2 years in a financial management program. And then there's an internal audit staff that I did for 5 years. And then I took a job, which will actually speak to my second point that I was making in this whole dialogue. And then I took that role, and it was about 9 or 10 years into the company, and it was a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, we're always interested in that investment that you make along the way. So, but please continue. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, in terms of broadening your skill set, so I just mentioned that, there's about a 7-year development program where I, in theory, had probably 20 jobs, because you rotate every 4 to 6 months. And you get to see different industries, different types of finance, et cetera, and that really prepares you. It's a terrific foundation. And I knew that if I wanted to be a CFO of a large capital equipment business like an aircraft engines, where financing mattered, I had actually asked to go to our GE Financial Services business and went to our aircraft leasing business. I didn't know anything about the financial services business model. And there was 400 people, just to paint the picture here, 400 people that run this aviation leasing business that literally make in total $1 billion of income per year. These are the experts in the space. Not only do they know financial services, they know aircraft leasing very well. And here I come, I know nothing, and I'm the head of financial planning and analysis, and they must have been sitting there going, who is this guy? Like, he knows nothing about it. But nonetheless, they know if you're ready to learn and you're ready to dig in and roll your sleeves up, you really become part of the team. And that's really what matters. And that financing really helps me even to this day. Whether we're financing a deal on our end, we're buying something, we're selling something, understanding capital and financing really is important. And that was the second skill set, or the second point I was making, is go learn different skills. And then the last part was communicate and inspire. Communicate and inspire, really, I'd say in the first 5 to 10 years, you execute. That's really your leadership style. That's what you're there for. And you always execute, but that's, you're primarily an individual contributor. And then you mobilize resources, the next 5 to 10 years. And then you have to literally learn how to inspire and communicate to people. And I definitely have some lessons along the way when I took that for granted, and said, hey, I've got an audience of 500 people. They're hard charging. And I didn't really prepare well enough to understand what's really on their minds. What do I need to answer? What are the questions they have? And how do I make sure that they understand, here's what we want? And that was a big learning moment for me, that you have to move it the farther up you go into inspiring and communicating well versus just leading and executing.
It sounded like in part you learned that the hard way, but can you share with us? I know GE is really good at this. You folks have really developed your presentation skills, and we've had a few finance leaders with GE backgrounds who credit GE for helping them. Why? What does GE have right in this respect? And I'm sure you've compared notes to other corporate track executives. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's advice I give to many people in their career is go to a company that wants to develop you. And GE did that in spades. Obviously, we had our share of mistakes when I was there as well. But in general, they invested over $1 billion a year in people development. And that was from what I call the hard skills, whether it's accounting and finance and certain technical things, or the soft skills, which was communication and leadership and presentation and understanding how to inspire. So I really think that that's what's important as you identify what you want to do in your career. You want to go to a company that's going to develop you and really grow your overall skill set.
You had a few CFO tours of duty within GE, but you could have stepped into a CFO role sooner, one would imagine. And was it ever something you think about, or you were happy and I don't know what the full number of years were.
I spent 20 years there, and I really wouldn't change a thing. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I have such good friends, such good mentors from GE. And really, I wasn't looking to leave. I think it was more of a personal family decision. It was a couple things. One is we wanted to stay in the Boston community. And we knew that at GE, for me to continue to progress, I probably had to go lead a division, whether that was the aviation division overall or the healthcare business or the energy business, et cetera. But we didn't really want to leave. And the second thing is I did want to test my hand as a public CFO. Wanted to see if I could do it, and it brought great learning. So but the 20 years I had spent at GE were terrific and really helped me, be, I think, relatively successful in the last 5 years.
Was there ever a time you really had to raise your hand where you felt like I'm in a spot that I don't want to stay here longer than another 9 months? Let me out of here. How's it done?
Shockingly, no. It's really surprising. I mean, particularly at GE, I never asked for one job and never turned down a job either. The one job I asked for was coming off the audit staff and trying to get that financial services job. After that, they put me into aviation. They pushed me into the oil and gas sector. They brought me to corporate. And so I never really had to raise my hand, and the timing all worked out extremely well. So I was quite fortunate in that regard.
When you do leave, it's interesting you don't go into maybe airlines or, oil and energy. Why the segue the industries you've chosen, pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, it's ironic. I wanted to be a doctor when I was going into college, but I didn't have the stomach nor probably the grades to actually become a doctor. And when I went to GE, I actually wanted to go into the healthcare business, but I just kind of trusted my mentors, and they kind of shaped me along the way. And so I never really touched the healthcare business, but I've always had a passion for it. I just think that it's, a terrific industry. It serves people, extends lives, and, improves lives as well. So always had a passion for it. And then really when I reflected after 20 years and said, okay, where do we want to be as a family? I happen to be in Boston. It happens to be one of the life sciences, capitals of the world. And I thought this is a great time to jump. And I was fortunate to go to PerkinElmer, now Revvity, which is in the tools and diagnostic space of healthcare, and dip my toe into the healthcare space. And I am so blessed now that I'm at Moderna. It is a fantastic place. We are doing amazing things. The team is doing amazing things, and I feel blessed to be a part of it.
One other question or thought, a lot of finance leaders who stay with one company for as many years as you have, sometimes they become a little insular. They don't build their outside network. They don't go to all those finance executive conferences and rub elbows with people outside their company as much. Was that an issue for you, or did somewhere along the line you began doing more outreach? I don't know.
No, yeah, I think it still is an issue, frankly. You're right, Jack. I don't do enough of that. Not the rubbing elbows part, but I don't go and seek enough external help with some of my peer group, which I've started to do, particularly in this role. Of course, when I first became a public CFO, I started to ask, some of my peers, but I was also very fortunate. The CEO of the company was the prior CFO. So I had a great training ground and learning ground to work for a CEO that was a CFO. But now that I come into the biotech and pharmaceutical industry, there is a lot to learn, and I'm starting to expand my Rolodex. But you're right. In the 20 years that I worked at GE, you still get that flavor because you're in so many different industries. You're in aviation, you're in energy, locomotives, financial services. So it's almost as if you're getting external perspective on CFOs that are running different businesses in industries, but not purely external outside of the GE way of doing things.
When you do decide to leave, is it a recruiter that finally helps you move on? Is it a recruiter? Is it a network? What is it? Yep.
It's it's a recruiter. It's a recruiter. So okay. I'm sure it's also network for people as well, but just in my circumstance, it happened to be a recruiter.
You go to PerkinElmer, a fairly sizable company. Can you tell us just about that transition? First time outside the GE wide body. What would you tell us? Yeah.
It's an amazing experience. So let me just describe PerkinElmer first. They make tools and diagnostics for the life sciences space. So ultimately, they actually developed a test to detect COVID, ironically, when I was there. And now I came to Moderna, who also helped in the COVID space. So, but I think that, when I was approaching that job, I knew that I was going to, the finance skill set I, for the most, felt pretty comfortable with. And I felt comfortable with the people, but I needed to know the space. But that's why, GE kind of prepares you for that. As I mentioned, I hit a lot of different industries across my career. And so you get used to being a fish out of water. And that's really what I had to get up to speed on is what is the science? What is the technology? Just so happens I'm doing the same thing now at Moderna. And then the other thing is so that's what I knew would take a while. And it does take a while to become more of an expert in the space. And then the other thing is you really learn every word you say matters and is being listened to, even publicly. So your first interview with a reporter, those words might get printed in the press or will get printed in the press. And it's not that I was naive to know that, but I mean, you make a couple of mistakes. You're like, oof, I wish I had said that maybe just a slightly differently. So that's probably one of the bigger learnings as I entered that job.
Well, it's interesting. Moderna, of course, a household name today that we've all learned sort of the hard way,
Yeah.
I guess, during the pandemic, where you joined them in September 2022. So it looks like PerkinElmer, you were a leader throughout the pandemic at that company, and you step in just as hopefully you were entering that last chapter at Moderna in terms of the pandemic. So we're curious. Tell us about Moderna today and the company you were joining, sort of in this last chapter of the pandemic and the new future ahead. What's the company about?
So I think what most people don't understand is Moderna is so much more than a COVID company. In fact, that's just scratching the surface. And I'll walk through kind of the timeline and the journey of the company, but we really have a platform that can solve many different diseases and prevent many different diseases. And that's what we're doing. And we have over 40 drugs in the pipeline, and we're coming out to market with 4 or 5 new ones in the next few years here. And we're in the respiratory space. We're in the latent disease space, which just means that you've had a virus in your body, but it hasn't manifested itself for a while. Oncology space, rare disease space. And the platform can really do so much more. So what did I join? I joined that company that has the chance to truly transform healthcare. And that's what was exciting. I wasn't really looking to leave PerkinElmer, but it just seems like such an incredible opportunity that it's still relatively young in an overall company perspective. From an overall company perspective, it's 13 years old. But we have this amazing pipeline and this amazing ability to do and improve so many people's lives. And if you just kind of play back the last 5 years, pre-COVID, it was a research company. No commercial, no products on the market. Then we quickly, with COVID, had to become commercial as fast as possible. So we ramped up the manufacturing, ramped up our partners to really try to, and we served over 1 billion people in the world over the last couple of years here. Had lots of sales, almost $40 billion in sales over the course of a couple of years. And then now I joined in 2022 when it's starting to ramp down. And so what does that mean? But and another important point is we knew that COVID wasn't going to be there forever. So we invested a ton in R&D. And to put that into perspective, I think in 2019, we spent about $500 million in R&D. Last year this year we'll spend nearly $5 billion in R&D. So that's why we knew we had to bring more drugs to market as fast as possible. And we had the capital to do that, in which we felt very fortunate. So I joined in late 2022. The volumes are coming down, so we have to help resize the business over the last couple of years in terms of that manufacturing footprint, and that is not completely done, but we've done a lot of work around that. And then we've got to bring these drugs to market. I mean, that's really our job is, we've said by 2025, we'll launch 4 or 5 drugs, and by 2028, we hope to launch 15 drugs. And that's the fruits of that R&D and investment that we've put into the company. And so that's the company I joined, and we're quite excited about it.
Now, is it 15 new products? 15?
15.
And your lines of sight into how those opportunities are developing, how those offerings are developing. And as someone who, joined the sector less than 10 years ago,
are you confident your lines of sight what they need to be to understand how those offerings are maturing and whether they're staying on track?
We are. The beauty of our platform, Jack. There's many things, but one of them is it's got a high probability of success. Once we de-risk a product, mRNA is just the body's information molecule, and you can quickly reprogram it. And I'll give you an example with our flu product, which should come to market in the next couple of years. Our flu product, we actually in a phase 3 trial missed on some of the B antigens. There's A antigens that are out there for flu, and there's B antigens. Most of the people's illness are on the A antigens, but we missed on the B antigens. In a matter of 6 months, we fixed that. And we already proved it in a phase 3 trial. It's that kind of rapid development and that kind of proof and that high probability of success that once we know that we can make a difference and once it's proven, those drugs become very high probability of success. And the same is true with cancer. We just came out with something, new data around melanoma and adjuvant melanoma, and our ability when combined with a product called Keytruda, which Merck makes and was one of the leading oncology companies in the world, we can improve the outcome for patients by almost 50%. And so we know, and we tested and we see the data. And so we've got very good line of sight to and high confidence in this pipeline coming to market.
And as a finance leader, I'd like you to compare yourself to a company with more mature offerings. And clearly the revenues and all of what they might be looking at. You're looking at the allocation of research dollars, no? I mean, what's important here as you develop these 15 products? If one of the
development teams comes to you and tells you, we misfired here, we're going to need a much larger investment. What guides you here as far as getting to yes or having to say no? What is it that's happening?
Yeah, sure. So just to put it into perspective, R&D makes up maybe 50%, close to 50% of our investment. And so we can talk about what else we're trying to do to invest in the company to make sure that it can bring not 15 drugs to market, but 50 plus drugs to market someday. But specific to the R&D point, you're right. We've always had a methodology for de-risking a product. So we look at a science and say, how does it work? Can it work in the liver? Can our mRNA molecule get into the liver? Question number one. And so therefore the technology is sound. Then we say, okay, well, which disease are we going up against? And we know that if it's proven that it can work on a certain enzymatic disease in the liver, as an example, then it can work on many enzymatic diseases, to which there are, I think, over 1,000 in the liver. So we've always been very methodical about how we de-risk our R&D. Now, of course, things change. Not necessarily because the probability of success changes. I'd say, what you need to do to confirm it, get the right amount of data, get the statistical significance. You might need 5,000 patients as opposed to 4,000 patients, and that might change things. Or there might be a delay because something happens. And so plans change, but fundamentally, the overall science, when we make a bet, and the other thing I should say, Jack, is you start with a phase 1 trial. A phase 1 trial is just a few patients, and you really prove it there before you go to a phase 3 trial, which costs a lot of money. But by the time we get to a phase 3 trial, we're pretty confident in our platform.
Could you share some perspective with us here as far as this de-risking? Is this something that companies did 10 years ago, or is there something fundamentally new here that Moderna is helping, advance as far as de-risking its investments and then in the development of these types of offerings?
I think it's a function of two things. One is mRNA. Moderna was founded in 2010-11 timeframe. So we're improving the technology on its own, mRNA technology, and we're learning things every day, and we will always learn things every day. But that, in general, have continued to be de-risked, that we know that it'll work. It's proven in COVID. The second thing is, once that got de-risked, but once that got proven in COVID, A, what changed the game was we got a lot of capital as a result. And B, it was no longer a question mark. It was a fact that mRNA could actually help prevent infectious disease and help in the world. And so I think it's just a timeline of it was a belief. It was a belief. It started to get, the technology got better and better. Then you get an in-source of capital, you get proven externally, and then you can pour more capital behind additional products. So we were always looking at therapies and other infectious diseases. But once you get that capital and that proof, you have a lot more confidence to double down.
Can you give us a sense of how you go about educating investors on the earnings calls, what have you? As you're educating them, what is it that you're charting for them? How the offerings are moving from one trial to the third trial, and that we're staying on course? Look, there hasn't been any, we haven't gotten off course at all in the last, 3 years, and we're not going to start now. I don't know what are you signaling? What's the messaging that's so important to get across there?
You're exactly right. Investors at every phase of data has a higher level of importance. So if you prove something in phase 1, you show them some data, but they say, investors say, well, that's really interesting, but it still has a low probability of success because I don't know if it'll apply to all patients. It's really just a small patient population. I don't know, whether you can manufacture it well, whether it's going to sell. There's still a lot of risk. And so you put out data at phase 1, you put out data largely, we go to phase 2, phase 3, and that's what we are charting for people to say. And once you get through phase 3, then you need regulatory approval, and you get regulatory approval, and then it can be commercial. And that's what investors want to know is, okay, well, it's great that you have 6 drugs in phase 3, but when can I count on the revenue? So, I'll give you another example. There's a lot of excitement over the ability to combine flu vaccines with COVID vaccines and maybe even RSV vaccines to really simplify for payers and patients and the entire healthcare community. And myself, I'd rather have 1 shot than 3 shots. That people are saying, when's it coming to market? And we try to give some tea leaves to say, well, we've just started the phase 3 trial. That takes a little while. Then you got to have data. And there's kind of rules of thumbs out there that say, okay, well, if they just went into trial and it takes 6 months, and then all of a sudden they have to clean the data and then report the data, and then all of a sudden file for approval, and that takes 9 or 12 months. This thing won't be ready till 2026. I'm just making that up. So that is what investors want to know is, do I believe you? Do I believe your product's going to be good? Number 1. And number 2, when can I model the revenue? When is it going to come to fruition?
Now, when you step in 2022, I'm curious, over the past, 12 to 13 months, 14 months, did you understand that there was a certain dynamic that you needed to educate, whether it was internally or even the investors, educate them a little differently? We need to do a better job helping people understand what this number or this metric or this, how we display this. It might be as simple as, you began a weekly conference call, just talking about this number because you felt it had been ignored, neglected, or people weren't interpreting it correctly. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand, was there a number or metric that you brought forth or you realized it's not getting all the attention that it deserves? Anything?
Yeah, there is. There's something. It's not exactly the same, but I'll give you, my answer to what has really had to change a little bit is, when we were having $18 billion in revenue and we were fortunate to have a lot of income, nobody worried. Everybody said, okay, invest as much as you'd like in R&D. Now we've set guidance as an example for next year that will be about $4 billion in revenue. And we're still going to invest a lot in R&D. We said, I think, $4.5 billion in revenue. So we're actually going to guide that we're losing money next year. And that was on people's mind. And they were like, people are saying, hey, you're fortunate to have a lot of cash. We started this year with $18 billion. We guided that we'll end next year at $9 billion. But people were starting to say, when are you going to make money? And so that was what we had to put a lens on is, yes, you're investing in all these wonderful products. Yes, some products will come to market, but when will you actually turn a profit or at least break even? And that's what we recently went to market with, is to say by 2026, we will break even as a company. And yes, over the next 2 years, in 2024 and 2025, we are going to invest a lot of money and most likely lose money. But we think that's the right thing to do because we have this incredible platform that is going to bring a lot of drugs to market. And someday will be a very different financial profile with many drugs and a much higher revenue and much higher profit. And so that is what we had to bring to investors is, when will you break even? How much cash are you going to burn through?
Yep. Great. That's great. Thank you for that. I want to just touch on, and I forget, We always try to touch on AI with finance leaders. Is this intersecting your world? I mean, it's intersecting everybody's world, but I'm wondering if it's when you're having an AI conversation, is it, in what respect is it? How it's going to change your trials? How it might accelerate them in some fashion? Is it how you look at data internally? How that might be augmented in some fashion? I don't know. What would you share with us when it comes to the world of AI?
Yeah, we are heavy users of AI. And let me first explain why. We have right now, as you know, only have one product, and that is COVID. And as I mentioned, we hope to have 15, 50, 100 plus products. And so we have the opportunity to build the company very differently right now. Before you have 15 products, before we might do some acquisitions or whatever might happen someday. So we want to build the company correctly right now. And AI gives us the opportunity to be extremely productive in every single function in our company. You mentioned, and we actually just had an investor day about a month ago that walked through our digital framework and everything we're doing on AI. So let me just touch on it. You mentioned drug development. It should predict what drugs will work better, which formula might work, what to test, what to look for. And so the speed and the accuracy and the success rate of our drug development will improve. We definitely invest there. Manufacturing. So I mentioned this oncology product that we're working on with Merck. That is an individualized therapy. So for you, Jack, if we're screening for you, we actually treat you with a different product than if it was for me. So we actually sequence your genome or in a cell and say, okay, what's a positive, what's a cancer cell and what's not a cancer cell, and we create something that says this is the right formula to give to Jack because his immune system will fight it. So you might imagine that if we get 5,000 patients coming to us, which ones are going to come first and how do we schedule the manufacturing? Because this is no longer a manufacturing process that is for everybody. This is for unique individuals. So we're using AI just to be able to predict, should I schedule Jack first or should I schedule Jamey first? And then in the back office, all of us in the back office, I call myself in the back office, finance people. We use it left and right in terms of even the ability to answer questions. So we have a procure to pay team that is really a service to the entire company. If a vendor needs to be paid and somebody has a question about why is my vendor not getting being paid or what do I need to do, then we use AI just to answer their questions as opposed to having them call our procure to pay team. So we have the opportunity to build the company right now to be productive for the very long term.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our finance strategic moment question. This is where we ask you just to share one moment of strategic insight that you've had along the way. We try to leave it to the finance leader to cherry pick out what they want to share. Anything you'd share with us?
Yeah, I'll go back to that aviation job and explain it a little bit more. So I didn't realize it. Normally finance team come in and you roll up a budget and you try to influence a year. You try to say, hey, can I sell a little bit more? Can I get a little bit more productive? And you plan for that and you execute to that and you keep your head down for it. In that job, we were investing R&D that was basically going to set up the next 50 years for GE Aviation. And it meant that we had to pick the right engines to get on the right aircraft. Because if the aircraft doesn't sell, you might have the best engine in the world, doesn't matter. You have to make sure that you're on the aircraft that are going to sell to all the airlines in the world. And it just so happened that all the major aircraft at that time were all being redone and refurbished at that point in time. And so we had to go through the 777, the 737, many other different airframers. And I finally realized, okay, I need to have a much longer perspective. I need to understand the market. I need to understand, will we win? Will we win sole source on a certain aircraft? And if we don't, what does that mean? Because you just lost half the revenue for the next 30 years. Because once an airframer invested in an aircraft, that aircraft is going to sell for a very long time. And so it was marketing, it was my own research, that I had to do. It was, could the manufacturing team make the engine at the right cost point? Was it going to have the right fuel burn efficiency? So product management and engineering had to get involved. Was it going to be the right service level? So that was the real aha moment that I, as a finance leader, had to look much longer than the next 1 to 3 years. I had to look out. We were making the bets for the next 30 years. And I just, go back to it. I was lucky at the time. The CEO of that business at the time, his name's Chip Blankenship, was a fantastic leader. And he took a few of us and said, this is our project. And he kind of put it into perspective. And I was like, oh, I didn't know what I was getting myself into here. But that was my strategic finance moment, which was, you're so focused every day on 1 to 3 years, but sometimes you got to realize this is for the next 30 years.
$37,025.1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI.
We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where we're going to ask you to look back again. Jamey, we'd like to, in fact, we're going to go back to the first time you stepped out of GE again, because I really want to understand this better. There must have been something as you think back to your first 30 days or 60 days at PerkinElmer. And again, it's when all of the, no longer like I said, the GE wide body, it's just you're stepping into this CFO role. And there must have been something you wish someone had told you. But if you were to go back in time, we're going to give you a pass. You get to go back and just hand yourself this note. What is it that you've written on it? And again, you're just into that job 30 days. What is it that you would have told yourself?
Yeah. I would have told myself to really first think about the enterprise. And it's not that I didn't think about the enterprise, but what does that mean? Don't think about the function, think about the enterprise. And specifically, where do we drive value? Real value creation for the company and for shareholders. And then are there gaps? And if there are gaps, align your team and build your team to those gaps and get to it right away. Because often when I came in, I was like, I need to understand everything and so many things and controllership and, who the investors are. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for a CFO to do is to drive value, allocate capital, and drive value creation behind that. And the faster you get going on it, the better, the more effective you'll be. And so I often, and actually maybe until recently, thought, hey, I'm just going to take it a little slower. I don't want to make any rash decisions. I don't want to, change the team. But I think that's actually not what I would say now. I would say, get in there. If you need to change the team, you need to change the team. You need to drive value and understand where your gaps are and start driving it.
One of the periods that we talk about with finance leaders frequently about how where they were during the financial crisis. You were deep in the GE family by then. I mean, is there any takeaways from that? Did your mindset, were you challenged in a certain way within GE? It was a tough time for GE as well as so many companies.
Yeah, great question. The financial... I think when the times are truly dire, I mean, there's risks every day, but when it's really concerning, I'll actually go back to when COVID first hit. And when COVID first hit and I was the CFO of PerkinElmer, I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, there was a chance revenue was going to be down 50+%. And so that's when you need to truly understand risk and communicate like hell. And so we were studying, okay, give me every scenario, every dollar cost. What can we affect? What's our cash flow? What's going to happen here? And really get my arms around that first. Second, when it's truly a dire time, while we have a lot of different stakeholders, it really, to me, it becomes employees first. That is what I thought you had to talk to employees, make sure they understood where we stand, what we're going to do, how they can help, because that's really when, you're really concerned, right? And investors matter, of course, and customers matter, but your employees at that moment, if you're nervous, they're super nervous. And you got to make sure you talk to them even more. I'm talking about when it's a really dire time. Turns out PerkinElmer ended up being okay because they developed a COVID test and had plenty of revenue. But at that moment, I think manage risk, understand it, and communicate to your employees.
Okay. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side, wondering if what in general people might not know about you. Is there something your colleagues, something they might not know about you? Anything?
More of an introvert than an extrovert, probably. I try to come across jovial and outgoing as much as I can, but I'm pretty much an introvert.
GE may have helped rewire you somewhat.
It is.
What about, would you have a book selection for us? Anything that's influenced your thinking or maybe something you escape with? Anything?
Yeah.
leave us with?
I'll give you 2 books. One is Capital Allocation by David Giroux, who is the Chief Investment Officer of T. Rowe and was a shareholder of PerkinElmer, and I learned a great deal from. And getting back to this whole theme of capital allocation and driving value creation, he really distills what are your options and what are your choices and why are they good or bad. And it was a fantastic book that I read and really has helped shape my thinking around capital allocation. And then the second that I like to recommend is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And really because it's relentlessness and risk-taking. And I think finance people, myself included, it is easy to say no. But that's not going to build a company. You have to find a way to take risks. No company's going to grow without taking risks. And he sure took a lot of risks. So, we have to take smart risks. But I think that's important for finance individuals to understand, what are you looking at? What are the metrics? How do I take risk? The answer is, it's too easy to say no. How do I get to yes and take the appropriate risks? And so those are the 2 I'd recommend. Excellent.
Great selections for us. We're up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. You've already shared a few clues here, but over the next 12 months, what are your priorities as CFO of Moderna?
Yeah. Well, I'll tie it to this whole, we're going to launch 5 products in 2 years and 15 products in 5 years. I really think, that, and I view our role, but my role as well, as we need to navigate this time period. It is going to be the low part, knock on wood, of our revenue moving forward. And we still have to invest super smartly to actually bring those drugs to life for patients. And so for the next 12 months, it is, my team will get sick of hearing it, risk and return. What are we spending our money on? Because capital is not infinite here. And yes, we are lucky and still fortunate that we have a fair amount of capital, but we have to scrutinize every investment to make sure it's the right investment so that we can bring those 5 or 15 drugs to market. Because after that, the financial profile, if that's done well, the financial profile of our company will be wildly different. And so I really think the next 12 months are pivotal in getting us through those 2 to 5 year time period.
Jamey Mock, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much, Jack.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOThoughtLeader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.